We'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
Needs to
stop.
You think we can allow?
Politics, policy, Parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
All too often, people will be sitting at home watching a press conference live, and they'll hear loads of questions being asked, and they'll be thinking, that's not my question. That's not my concern.
We don't care whose feathers we ruffle. We ask the questions that you want answering.
You're all standing on the street protesting and want to have an open discussion.
My name is Patrick Christie's. I do a show for GB News in the UK. Is it possible to talk to you quickly?
Journalism in this country has been a cosy world full of groupthink until now.
Well, this is the best view ever of Whitehall, looking out across all the tractor drivers of England who've come together to make their point.
Hello, so as you can see, I'm here in Westminster as the protest begins.
Yes, I'm very much in the thick of it.
Look, we're challenging narratives here at GB News, and that's what sets us apart.
Very good evening, live from Washington, D.C. This is The Late Show Live with the stories shaping Britain and America.
Sorry for having believed Mandelson's lies and appointed him.
Oh, give me strength. The Prime Minister on death row and a government on life support. Half of Britain apparently wants Sir Keir Starmer to resign. Only half. And tonight, a revelation from Washington, D.C. about Lord Mandelson's appointment that may finish off the Prime Minister.
And I have a feeling it's going to work out very well. They're talking about a very long-term, powerful lease, a very strong lease. And I think we'll be inclined to go along with your country.
Disappointing U-turn for most Brits tonight as President Trump suggests that he may be ready to sign the Prime Minister's Chagos deal, calling it the best deal that he could make. But in the art of the deal, of course, it's normally America that holds all the cards.
We have to ensure that those who do not have a right to be here are sent back to the countries from which they're from.
In President Trump's first year back in office, we've delivered the most secure border in American history.
As the UK government celebrates the deportation of nearly 60,000 illegal migrants and criminals since the election, we're asking tonight whether President Trump is the driving force behind Britain's crackdown. We're going to be debating that a little bit later.
It's just bullshit, right? And that's what you got going on in California.
So GB News exclusive, Ben sat down with the Brit and former advisor to David Cameron, running to be the next governor of California. It's a story that you should be aware of, but you may not be yet. This is The Late Show Live with me, Bev Turner. Thank you for joining me here in Washington, D.C. My panel. Look, the boys are back together for the first time, I think, this year, you two. Yep. Mally Smith and Stephen Kent are here with me. Did you coordinate your outfits deliberately?
We didn't, but I always wear this, so I think this one's a little bit on Stephen. A major blunder. I accidentally put on the Mally Smith uniform, and now we're twinning, so I'll just keep the glasses off just to confuse the viewers.
I like it. You look like my backing singers.
Not all Americans look the same.
You look like my backing singers. Also tonight, not only have we got Mally Smith, one of the lefties that you can bear, we've also got one of the other lefties that you love, actually, at home. Matt Torbett is with us down the line in London this evening. So nice to see you, Matt. We will be bringing you in as much as we can because we have a very busy show. So moving on to our main news this evening. The Prime Minister is fighting for his premiership over his decision to appoint Peter Mandelson as Britain's ambassador to the United States. The level of anger amongst MPs today is palpable. He delivered an apology over that decision. Here it is.
Prime Minister, why was it that a man who had already twice resigned from government and, crucially, had a publicly known ongoing friendship with a convicted paedophile was appointed by you as ambassador to Washington?
It has been known publicly for some time that they knew each other. That is precisely why those questions were asked. The answers given to those questions were intentionally intended to create the impression that Mandelson barely knew him. Sorry for having believed Mandelson's lies and appointed him.
Just find that the most astonishingly insincere speech from the police, and it could be from the police, from Keir Starmer, from the Prime Minister. It could be, however, a revelation from Washington this evening that brings down the Prime Minister, because we understand that the American Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, issued a warning to Labour and Downing Street when they suggested that Peter Mandelson was going to be appointed as the British ambassador to the US. We believe that the White House was literally asking incredulously, what are you doing? Well, joining me this evening, as I say, Mally, Stephen and Matthew down the line. Gentlemen, let's get stuck into this. Matt, I'm going to come to you first, actually, as our Brit on this. If it transpires, and this is stood up, this claim, and if it is true that America looked at Starmer when he said, I'm going to put Mandelson in this position, in this beautiful house, the ambassador's residence in Washington, to have one of the most powerful diplomatic roles in the world, and Marco Rubio said, are you mad? What are you thinking? That means that Starmer hasn't got a leg to stand on, doesn't it?
That would be to assume he has one to stand on at the moment. I think to basically have somewhat of a Googleable Word doc that's been copy and pasted, and that's your due diligence, and then to be astounded that a compulsive and career-led liar has lied to you several times, it leaves me to think you're at best naive, at worst a bit thick. So it's embarrassing. Will the American stuff cut through to ordinary people at home? I don't think massively. And I think all this has done this week is fast forward the sort of end of Keir Starmer's term as Labour Prime Minister. I think the real kicker will actually be at the end of the month, which will be the by-election, where I think Labour will come probably second at best, if not third.
Yeah, crikey. Stephen, let me come to you on this. Were you aware of who Lord Mandelson was before he arrived in this city? It's been a bit of a learning curve to understand how our Prime Minister's got himself into this mess. What's your assessment of it?
Yeah, sure. Plenty aware as a diplomat from the UK, but, you know, Marco Rubio is more likely to know things about most people. He served for a very long time on the Senate Intelligence Committee, and we don't really know what goes on behind closed doors there, but you can assume that he knows things about people. And you can say whatever you want about people within the Trump administration. Marco Rubio's probably got to be one of the most squeaky clean type of guys that you would ever want to have in your administration. There's hardly ever been a whiff of scandal about him, and if he tells you that there is something about somebody that you might not like and something untoward, you should take him seriously. Now, the Telegraph's article is somewhat thinly sourced. Connor Stringer is a wonderful reporter. He's been on this show, and I was reading this article earlier and kind of looking for the exact information that Rubio gave. It just said that he is believed to have expressed concern. So maybe we'll get more details on that in the future.
It's very plausible, though, Mally, because frankly, you didn't have to have been on a National Security Committee to, when it was announced that it was going to be Mandelson in this job, to go, are you mad? I literally did that very thing from this seat at the time when he was announced. What's your take on it?
Well, I'm with Stephen. Rubio, A, is someone who, you know, as much as I might disagree with some of his politics, I had no worry that he would be on Epstein's island. And B, being on the Intelligence Committee and now Secretary of State, he's going to know things we're not going to know. I do think it's pretty rich, though, him talking to Starmer's government saying, oh, you have someone who has connections to Epstein in your government. Rubio, my man. The call
No, you
is,
got to,
Rubio,
Rally,
my man.
I know where you're going here. This isn't connections. This is really actually damaging photos.
The call is coming from inside the House. Donald Trump is mentioned more in the Epstein files than Harry Potter.
You've got
is
to grow
mentioned in
beyond
all
mentions.
of the Harry Potter.
Mentions in the Epstein files are not the problem. It's actually photos and documented evidence of weird sex pest behavior, which the President of the United States, for all of his dalliances, there is no evidence that criminal activity or untoward activity has ever touched the president with regards to Epstein. Epstein had his tentacles in the socialite circles on every side of the world.
Epstein himself emailed that Trump knew about the girls and knew of what was going on. And if we're talking about connections in the Trump administration, Howard Lutnick lied and said that he had cut off contact with Epstein years after he actually did. We know that he was arranging a trip to Epstein's Island in 2013. So look, I'm glad Rubio told the Starmer government that there was a problem, and I appreciate that the UK public sees it as a problem, but it is rich given all the Epstein connections within the Trump administration.
Well, I have to say, you're right, there are mentions of Trump, but they are just mentions of him. It's other people talking about him in the Epstein files. There isn't a suggestion. I mean, there's so many conversations about so many people who were part of this very elite, powerful, rich club. Like, it's a clique, Matt, isn't it? It's literally like playground clique culture on financial steroids. That's how I look at it. Let me just bring that in. There's nobody
he knew
he didn't
everybody
know.
in the world. Zoran Mondani's mother.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nobody at the echelons of power who doesn't have an email from this guy at some point.
Yeah.
And we've got to get real about what that means and who actually committed criminal activity. And Malley is still pushing an unproven and false lie.
Yeah. Apparently Charlie Rowley's in the studio as well, is he? Hello, Charlie. I didn't know you were there, Charlie Rowley. Let me come to you. Good evening.
Don't worry, hiding.
I can hear a disembodied voice. There he is. Oh, hi. Right. Now, what do you think about all this? Starmer's on his last legs, isn't he? If it does turn out that this is true, that even Marco Rubio here, Secretary of State, would have to work with Mandelson and warned the Prime Minister. Are you sure you want to put Mandelson in that job? Given that the Epstein files were coming down the line and we knew that was going to happen, how can Starmer get away with such terrible judgments?
Well, you're absolutely right. It is the judgment of the Prime Minister who made a political appointment. He cannot hide behind the process of the civil service appointing someone or a Secretary of State or a Cabinet Secretary making an appointment. This was on him. And the focus should be not the tittle-tattle, not about what was known in the press. We all knew in the press that Mandelson had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He might have had many other dodgy relationships that have been reported, whether it was in Bloomberg or the Financial Times. All of that can be put to one side, in a sense. But what Kemi Badenoch did yesterday at Prime Minister's Questions on Wednesday afternoon, she said to the Prime Minister, were you aware of the national security vetting document when it crossed your desk that Peter Mandelson had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein that was raised? And the Prime Minister stood up and said, yes. Now, in a national security vetting document, it's not going to flag a positive relationship. It's not going to flag anything insignificant. So clearly, on the Prime Minister's desk, when he was making a political appointment, there was an issue with the relationship between Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein. And despite however many pages there might have been in that document, that existed because the Prime Minister confirmed that the national security vetting document raised that issue, and yet the Prime Minister appointed someone who obviously was Peter Mandelson, who had a relationship with a convicted serial paedophile, and that is the Prime Minister's judgment. That is his judgment alone, and that is why he is clearly not fit for office, and that's why so many people are exercised about it.
Sure. Well, Lord Mandelson, of course, would deny any wrongdoing. He's not been charged with anything, not yet. But Matt, let me just also bring in this idea of this whiff of Palantir about this, which nobody's really talking about in quite the right way, that Mandelson was in collaboration with Peter Thiel, who runs Palantir here in America. Palantir has got its claws into the NHS. It's got all sorts of contracts. Mandelson was part of this. Him and Starmer and Peter Thiel have a secret meeting here in DC. We've got no minutes of it. We've got no notes of it. Do you have any faith that we're going to get to the bottom of the murky financial shenanigans which have gone on? Never mind all the sex stuff. I'm a bit less shocked about the sex stuff. Do you know what? For years, rich and powerful men have been trying to have sex with young women. That doesn't shock me. What I'm more concerned about is the financial corruption behind this, Matt. Are you?
It concerns me massively, and I think that's clearly what Peter Mandelson's now being investigated by the Met about, because it's one thing being friends with somebody who's totally dodgy and odd and a criminal. I think it's just as bad to be treasonous in one sense and potentially break the Official Secrets Act and misconduct in a public office. And do I have any faith we'll get to the bottom of it? Well, not necessarily, because we wouldn't have ever known any of this if it wasn't for the release of these files. Yeah. This was obviously at a time when these people were dealing in emails as opposed to instant messaging. We have now government by WhatsApp that's been like that for a long time. People turn the disappearing messages off to avoid FOIs and all sorts of other things. So I have very little faith that we'll get to the bottom of this. It was interesting, actually. The only person I've heard mention the Palantir relationship was Zach Polanski on Newsnight the other night. I've not heard any mainstream politician mention it whatsoever. And maybe it's not a sexy enough issue, but I think it's something people should be concerned about, definitely.
Oh, absolutely. As Starmer walks us into our digital cage, it's what everyone should be concerned about. Let's just remind ourselves what some of the main political leaders have said about this issue. Here we go.
I am sorry. Sorry for what was done to you.
This is the biggest scandal in British politics for over 1 century.
It is not all on Peter Mandelson. It is also on Downing Street. And I think that if it's not Keir Starmer, then it should be Morgan McSweeney. Both of them have a lot to answer for, and both of them are hiding.
Sorry for having believed Mandelson's lies and appointed him.
I don't know how long Starmer will last as Prime Minister.
Your views are coming in at home. Ice Cold Truth has said maybe we should rename him Keir Squirmer. He just keeps his name does lend itself to more and more monikers, doesn't it? Matt, how close is he to losing his job at the moment? I believe you've had a conversation with Angela Rayner. Is that right?
I speak to Angela quite regularly. I speak to lots of politicians quite regularly. I spoke to one last week who was prepared to be a stalking horse before all this happened. There's clearly movement. There are a lot of senior politicians in the cabinet weighing up their options. The problem is with Labour, or maybe it's not a problem, having looked at the previous government, is we don't change our leaders. We don't challenge our leaders, and unless somebody has the conkers, to put it bluntly, to go, right, I'm going to now change this, we need to get from a position of something needs to change to something needs to change and I am the person to do that. I think you're going to be looking at Angela Rayner, you're going to be looking at Wes Streeting. Ed Miliband, I believe, wants to be Chancellor and is prepared to be a kingmaker on the soft left. There'll be a whole load of... you've even had Al Cairns, the Veterans Minister, who's only really recently elected in 2024, well-respected, former veteran, knows a thing or two about leadership. Very interesting name to be thrown in there as well. Yeah.
Is that Alicia Kearns, did you say? I just dropped out then, Matt.
No, Al Cairns. He's Alistair Cairns. He's the Veterans Minister. Very little is known about him. There's no real sort of footprint about him whatsoever because of his time in the army. Nice bloke, as far as I'm concerned. Would he be a leader? I don't know. He's very green, really, for a politician, so we'll see.
OK, interesting. Right, still to come this evening. Thank you. Let me know what you think at home. GBNews.com /your say. Still to come this evening on The Late Show Live.
We have to ensure that those who do not have a right to be here are sent back to the countries from which they're from.
In President Trump's first year back in office, we've delivered the most secure border in American history.
So as the UK government celebrates the record deportation of illegal migrants and criminals since the election of Starmer, is President Trump the driving force behind Britain's crackdown? That's coming up shortly. First, though, tonight.
Now they're looking to essentially just do a lease and sell it, and I'm against that. You know, it's reasonably nothing like Greenland. but it's a reasonably important area of the globe.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GBNews, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
And
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's just bullshit, right? And that's what you got going on in California.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. That exclusive interview there with the Republican candidate for California, a Brit, Steve Hilton, with Ben Leo. We're going to be showing you that in just a little while. It's very interesting. Moving on, though, amid an onslaught of bad news from opponents and Labour MPs, there may be some moderately good news for the Prime Minister, because it appeared this afternoon in the briefing room here in the White House that President Trump has grudgingly supported the Chagos Islands deal, despite his previous scathing attacks. Taking to social media platform Truth Social, the President said, "I've had very productive discussions with Prime Minister Keir Starmer about the island of Diego Garcia. It is a site of major US military base strategically situated in the middle of the Indian Ocean." He said, "I understand that the deal Prime Minister Starmer has made, according to many, is the best deal he could make. However, if the lease deal sometime in the future ever falls apart, or anyone threatens or endangers US operations and forces at our base, I retain the right to militarily secure and reinforce the American presence in Diego Garcia." Right, I'm joined in the studio, familiar face to lots of you, from the Heritage Foundation, former aide to Margaret Thatcher, Niall Gardner's here with me. Niall, I'm so pleased you're here. What is going on?
Well, it's a great question, Bev, and certainly the President's statement today sent a lot of different messages. It wasn't exactly an emphatic endorsement of the Chagos surrender deal, but certainly the statement, I think, was not helpful overall. And unfortunately, of course, Keir Starmer's team has launched a huge PR offensive in Washington in the course of the last couple of weeks, and they have appealed to a wide range of officials within the Trump administration. Some of those officials clearly have decided to side with Keir Starmer on this, and hence the statement that we saw. Now, having said all that, I've actually spoken to a number of administration officials also today, and the message is very clear that this is not game over. In fact, there's a lot of opposition within the Trump administration to the deal, especially within the White House itself.
Right.
And one official said to me today that anything can happen in the next couple of weeks, and the president could very easily actually issue a different kind of statement if he sees a real danger to U.S. interests. And of course, there is an immense danger, of course, to American interests, actually. So anything could happen. All options still on the table. So I still retain some hope, although today, of course, was a tough day for all of us who have been campaigning to defeat this nefarious, evil deal.
Absolutely. Let's have a quick look at what the President's spokesperson, Caroline Leavitt, said in the briefing room today. She's, of course, talking on behalf of the President. She was asked about Chagos. Have a quick look.
The President reiterated to the Prime Minister and to all of you that the United States will never waver, if necessary, in protecting our assets anywhere in the world, but including on Diego Garcia.
We'll never waver in protecting our assets, but is there some naivety here, Niall? If we look at the quote from the Prime Minister, from the President, saying that if the lease changes, let me just find the actual quote, because I want you to explain to me what he meant by this. I retain the right to militarily secure and reinforce the American presence in Diego Garcia. Now, that is if the lease deal sometime in the future ever falls apart. Does that demonstrate to you a clear understanding of this deal?
You know, I do think that there is still an opportunity to fully brief the President on this deal.
That's a very polite way of saying he still doesn't understand it.
I do hope, for example, that that Nigel Farage will come over to Washington again in the very near future and directly speak to the President about this, because I think there's a huge amount of disinformation that's been spread by the Socialist, Labour, British-hating government, frankly, and a lot of lies actually have been disseminated here in Washington, and of course the future of Diego Garcia will be gravely impacted by the surrender deal, and ultimately, of course, communist China, in my view, will gain control of Diego Garcia, and also, and this is very significant. The Reform Party in the UK have rightly said that they will tear up the deal, and they're not going to pay Mauritius £35 billion, and therefore the deal then will be finished. And in that case, of course, the US would have to act to prevent communist China from taking Diego Garcia. So the US has a choice: either sink this deal right now, send it to the bottom of the Indian Ocean, or in a few years' time have to take on communist China for the control of Diego Garcia at immense expense, of course, to the American people. And this is a very dangerous situation. The President needs to do the right thing, sink the deal now, actually, and torpedo it in the same way that Margaret Thatcher, of course, torpedoed the Belgrano during the Falklands War. That's exactly what needs to be done.
I've been asking the question repeatedly, publicly, and also just in my own mind, turning it over. What is in this for them? What is in this for Starmer and Jonathan Powell and some of the other key protagonists who've been pushing this through? The names will be more familiar to you than they are to me. Former MP Andrew Bridgen suggested online today that he believes he has a smoking gun to say that they're going to financially profit from this. I have no evidence of that, and I haven't seen anything to convince me of that. But would you like to think that there are people asking those questions behind the scenes? Why are they so intent on pushing this through? Do you think there is a possibility that there is personal motive rather than just the ideology of apologising for our colonial past?
Well, I think, firstly, once we have a new government in the UK, there should be a full parliamentary inquiry into the Chagos scandal and hold everyone involved to account, because this is a betrayal of the British national interest, a betrayal of the British people, and frankly it's also knifing the United States in the back as well. And I do think, secondly, this is a government that is, of course, driven by far left-wing ideology. They hate everything to do with Britain's great imperial past. In my view, this is the most anti-British government in British history. And Keir Starmer is frankly a traitor for what he's doing here with the Chagos surrender deal. He's throwing the British people under the bus, he's betraying the British national interest, and in my view he's also knifing the Americans in the back. This deal needs to be defeated. We can still do this.
Okay, thank you, Niall. Really appreciate your presence here tonight. Niall Gardner there, of course, from the Heritage Foundation. Let me know what you think at home. GBNews.com/your say. Now let's take a quick look at some of the other main news here in the United States of America. Well, the US and Iranian officials have agreed to hold talks on nuclear weapons in Oman. The talks are expected to begin on the 6 a.m. UK time following an increase of US forces in the region and threatened military action. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt made this statement earlier.
The president, diplomacy is always his first option when it comes to dealing with countries all around the world, whether it's our allies or our adversaries. And so Special Envoy Witkoff and Jared Kushner will be traveling to Oman for those talks tomorrow, and we will see what comes of those. The president is standing by for an update from them.
Also, Vice President J.D. Vance has claimed that European allies of America have made more concessions to the US over Greenland than they publicly admit, accusing them of being duplicitous on the world stage. Does he not understand about Europe? And Canadian pop star Tate McRae is facing backlash after appearing in a promotional video for Team USA ahead of the Milano Cortina Winter Olympics 2026. Fellow Canadians have slammed the video on social media, with some calling it treason.
Trying to get to Milan for an amazing opening ceremony and meet Team USA. Then it's the weekend with America's best skating for gold and Lindsey Vonn's epic comeback. And back to the States for the big game, Super Bowl 60.
I've got absolutely no idea who that woman was. Have you any idea now? No, none of us know. I'm sure you do at home. Still to come this evening on The Late Show Live.
This is not easy, and it is not a comfortable decision, and it's one that I wrestle with.
Breaking tonight, legal action has been launched against the government in a bid to stop a trial into puberty blockers for children. Also tonight,
the president and the Trump administration have been very clear. If you are in the country illegally, you are subject to deportation.
Are Washington, D.C. and President Trump the secret driving force behind record deportations in Britain? I'll tell you why I'm asking that next. This is The Late Show Live with Bev Turner, only on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates,
lively conversation,
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
and each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce,
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Epstein investigation. Thank you so much.
Oh, that's a little awkward, isn't it? King Charles was heckled about Jeffrey Epstein whilst greeting well-wishers. So do the royals have an obligation to speak out? Let me know what you think. We're going to be discussing that in just a while. First, though, breaking tonight, we can reveal that nearly 60,000 illegal migrants and convicted criminals have been removed or deported since the 2024 election. Another 43,000 people left voluntarily after being told they were in the UK illegally. Those figures, of course, follow scathing remarks from President Trump and separate warnings from him that Europe is on the verge of civilizational erasure because of mass migration. So do you think perhaps that Trump's success in this area is a secret driving force behind the government's deportation crackdown? Let's discuss this with Matt Stadlen and Deputy Online Editor of The Critic, Tom Jones. Evening, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me. So, Tom, do you think that the British government has been inspired by the success of President Trump in this country to stop illegal migration on the border and to deport those people who shouldn't be here?
I'm not quite sure inspired is the right word. I think probably pressured is the word I would choose. Basically, I think Trump's victory has really kind of pushed the Overton window of migration, particularly around enforcement of legal migration. And I think that's basically creates a kind of pressure for other Western governments to deal with migration. They're obviously at the very cutting edge of, in terms of their toughness on migration, but I think they are kind of showing a way that other Western governments are going to follow.
Yeah, Matt, what do you think? Because obviously it's one of the things that Trump can absolutely celebrate here in the US. He says, I was elected to kick people out of the country who shouldn't be here. He's done it. It's a success. Is it that Starmer is following in his footsteps?
I wouldn't describe Trump's policies as a success, given what we've seen in Minneapolis. But leaving that aside for a moment, it was in December, I think, that policy document came out, and where the American administration talked about the risk of civilizational decline. And actually, a lot of these removals and deportations would have taken place before that document. I think this government realizes that if you are here illegally, well, you shouldn't be here, and wants to enforce the law. I also think that they are aware of the political threat of Reform UK, and they want to show that they are indeed enforcing the law. And of course, the crisis with the small boats is so visible that it's being talked about almost on a daily basis, isn't it? Often on GBNews, and the government realises again, therefore, that there is an extra, I mean, to use that word, pressure is probably not the wrong word at all, actually, to realises that there is pressure to act.
I think that phrase that Tom used there about the fact that Trump has moved the Overton window, in other words, there were statements about illegal migration that just nobody uttered, and I think GBNews, as you say, has done a good job of making it acceptable for people to raise legitimate grievances about their changing high street, or the queue in the hospital, or the queue in the GP surgery when they arrive and they look around. There's a lot of people there who are not British born using those services. And how important has that been, though, Tom, that Trump has come out on the stage? We saw it at the UNGA conference in September, and we saw it in Davos just a couple of weeks ago, when he looks down the lens and he looks across the auditorium to the European leaders and he says, "You are ruining your countries." It looks like they may be finally listening.
I think to a certain extent that's true. I think there is always a danger with Trump that he goes a little bit too far and becomes a problem for the European right because of how he treats Europe, particularly over Greenland. But I think, you know, if you look at the way that Labour is talking about migration now, I think there's certainly a rhetorical convergence with Trump. You know, the language, they're talking about restoring order and control, scaling up removals, doing whatever it takes. You know, that echoes very tough law and order framing on immigration, even if I don't think they're going as far as Trump. I think even the emphasis on removals as a kind of performance metric is quite Trumpian, and the figures that have just been released by Labour are slightly massaged, and I think that's quite Trumpian. You know, to find the biggest possible definition of the amount of people that you've deported is a very, very Trumpian thing to do. So I do think Trump matters. I think it probably matters more in terms of theatre and rhetoric than in reality. But as I say, there is always that danger, particularly as Matthew touched on there, with the scenes in Minneapolis, that it becomes basically a no-go zone for the European right to roll out a programme of enforced mass deportations like we see in America.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Matthew Stadler and Tom Jones there. Thank you. Go on, Matt.
Can I just quickly push back on very quickly on a couple of things? We are not ruining our country, Bev, with immigration. Millions and millions of people in Britain are immigrants, or the children or grandchildren of immigrants. And to say that we're ruining our country is a really outrageous slur. You talk about people in the queue at the doctors. A lot of the doctors and nurses and hospital porters who contribute to keeping us alive and keeping us well in Britain are themselves either immigrants or from immigrant stock. So let's get that straight. And by the way, there was a chap you had on recently, a few minutes ago, I was watching, called Niall Gardiner, who described our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who, by the way, I think did make a mistake in his appointment of Peter Mandelson, but to describe him as a traitor over the Chagos deal, and now backed by Trump, apparently, in his U-turn on the U-turn. And for you, Bev, not to push back on that. Come on, Starmer is not a traitor. He's the Prime Minister of our country, trying to work in the national interest.
What's in it for us? What is in it for us to give away the Chagos and pay for the privilege of doing so? Do it.
Yeah, I will. There was a non-binding...
You don't have to explain it to me simply, because I'm not an idiot. But you can explain it to me, because you're on my show, so go ahead.
I'm not suggesting you're an idiot. I'm criticising you for not pushing back on one of your guests who described our Prime Minister as a traitor.
Go on then, tell me. What's in it for us?
I will tell you.
Okay, I'm asking you... All right, Matt. I'm asking you the question that you want to hear. You wanted me to ask him. I'll ask you. What is in it for the UK to give away the Chagos Islands and pay for the privilege of doing so?
So there was a non-binding decision in an international court that said that the Chagos Islands should really belong to Mauritius. And the concerns
Why?
first by the... Let me just make the argument very quickly. The concerns, first of all, by the
No,
previous
because I want you to
Tory
answer my
government...
question. I don't need an explanation of the legal backstory. I've heard that till I'm blue in the face. What I want from you, because we're not getting it from the government, and if you think Starmer's so fabulous for the UK, you tell me, Matt Stadlen, what is in it for the UK to give away the Chagos and pay for the privilege of doing so?
I'm just explaining it to you, Bebby. You're interrupting me. Because there was this non-binding decision that could one day have become binding, then under those circumstances we would have found ourselves potentially in a very significant pickle, because guess what? This country still believes in international law. Donald Trump may not, but we do. And as a consequence of that, the government is actually trying to work in our national interest and the interest of our defence as well to make sure that that scenario doesn't happen. And for one of your guests to describe those attempts as traitorous is truly outrageous of him. And I'm really surprised, Bev, that you didn't pick him up on it, because if you think that our Prime Minister is a traitor, that's disgraceful.
Do I think he's a traitor? Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to Chagos, I am not seeing him present, and there are people in this town right now, there are people in this town who are ferreting around, going into offices in this city, trying to convince this administration, potentially lying through their teeth about the situation with Chagos. Those people will not come on this show, Matt. They won't talk to the GBNews viewers. They won't talk to the British public to put their case forward, the likes of Jonathan Powell, to say why they are here, convincing Trump to go along with this ludicrous deal so that we can apologise for our colonial past. They won't convince, they won't talk to the public about it.
Donald Trump, your argument then, I thought you were rather a fan of Donald Trump. I'm not, let me be clear. But your argument is that the president is too stupid to understand that a deal that Starmer is striking, for which you think he is traitorous, he's too stupid to understand that deal.
I am saying that in a busy administration with a huge amount to deal with, when you take a representative from the government, if you take a British representative who is there in place of the Prime Minister, and Donald Trump will trust them, he will trust them on their word. Rubio, they will trust them. And when they lay out to them what it is that this means, they're believing them. And I think they're lying through their teeth about what this deal is. And I don't think they're being clear about what the implications are for national security in America. But you still haven't told me. All you told me is we've got ourselves into a little bit of a legal knot and Starmer's doing his best. That's absolute balderdash, Matt. You still haven't given me the reason, the logic as to why we're giving away Chagos and paying for the privilege.
So you and Niall Gardner are clever enough to understand this deal, but the British government is too stupid or too traitorous, and Donald Trump is too stupid to understand it. Last year in May, Marco Rubio supported the deal. Trump then, over the Greenland fiasco, which was outrageous, did a U-turn. And then today, to my surprise and to a lot of people's surprise, he's U-turned on the U-turn. But apparently your guest, who thinks that our Prime Minister is a traitor, your guest is clever enough to understand the problems, but Trump is too stupid. I thought you were a fan of Trump. That surprises me.
Niall Gardner is more committed to this topic and understanding it inside and out than anybody else in this city. And his argument that the needs of the British people are not being respected is completely worthy of listening to, and it is legitimate. So whatever the reasoning is, and you still haven't given me the reason why it is in the British interest to give away the Chagos and pay for the privilege. You can't tell me. I mean, you can't even sit there and say it's because we are disgusting colonialists. If you sat there and said, because we're disgusting colonialists and they deserve reparations, at least have the testicles to do that, Matt.
Because we don't want to find ourselves in a position where an international court forces us to give up those islands. Therefore, we wanted to strike a deal whereby we would be able to lease them for another 90 years.
Well, then in that case, they could come over here and they could say to Donald Trump, the previous government got us in a bit of a legal mess, which is not in the interest of the British public, and we need you to help us sort this out because you can nix it. And they haven't done that, so that's clearly not what they're thinking, Matt. Anyway, what a pleasure. Matthew Stadlen, thanks for staying. GBNews.com/Your Say, still to come this evening on The Late Show Live. We'll bring you exclusive interview with the Republican candidate of California, Steve Hilton. See you in a minute.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Thank you for all your messages on the Your Say. Hold your ground, Bev says, Chris, the man is talking nonsense. A lot of you, somebody just said they're going to metaphorically mop my brow after that. Thank you so much. Right, did you enjoy that, Stephen?
I hope he finds his testicles. We'll see what happens. Everybody needs to find them. So.
Right, moving on. As the King is heckled about Jeffrey Epstein whilst greeting well-wishers, do the royals have an obligation to speak out? Let me know your thoughts on that. It's in just a moment, but let's have a quick look at the front of the newspapers for tomorrow, shall we? Where shall we start, gentlemen? I wonder whether we should carry on that conversation that we just had then about whether the immigration issue is partly because of President Trump's success in this area. Do you think it is?
Yeah. So again, I wouldn't quite say success. I would say what your panelists mentioned about pressure, that Donald Trump put an immense amount of pressure on the entire world to change the way that it did business. Because I think Donald Trump, putting aside that he came down the golden escalator in 2015 and immediately started talking about the border, his main thing was, we want our allies to be better allies. And that was pushing people on defense, that was pushing people on their spending and their trade deals with the U.S. And then it was also, we need you to be stable allies. And that means we need you to actually have leaders picked by people who reflect the American view of the world. And immigration is a huge issue and a huge part of that. You guys have had about 9 million people enter your country since 1990, and that completely changes the nature of our closest allies. ally in the world.
Well, not according to Matt Stadler.
We've been putting
Apparently it's all
pressure on you to
positive.
change that.
Yeah, I can see that. What do you think, Mally?
Yeah, I would say it is because of Trump, and also because I think if you look at the U.S. government's actions, both in the Biden administration and Trump, you can learn from both the successes and the failures. Look, I think the Biden administration did a lot of good things, but with that being said, their inability to stop illegal immigration when you have these huge numbers of folks coming in drove people crazy. It really hurt Biden's approval. Now, I would say, though, if you look at polling, Americans hated Biden's immigration policy, but they've also soured on Trump's immigration policy. So I think there's this middle ground that the Labor government and any future U.S. government needs to take, which is close down the borders, make sure people are not getting through illegally, deport the people here who have committed crimes, who are violent, who are not good members of the community, but also provide a pathway to citizenship for folks who are living in the community who there's broad support for. I think Starmer can learn both from the failures and successes.
And Mally, you might find this rich, but the other thing that Donald Trump has actually helped to push in the UK and in France is the idea that if we are going to call ourselves the democratic societies of the West, that we actually need to be more democratic in our politics. You know, again, going back to immigration, only 300,000 people entered the UK from other countries in the 1990s, 1990 and 1997. After that, it was 3 million every 10 years, all the way up to now. And we go, who voted for that? So much has changed in the West, and nobody voted for this. The protests don't seem to change anything in the UK. The protests don't change anything in France, and they do it anyways. And I think Donald Trump, for all of his excesses, has actually been a force to say, what does it mean to be a democracy?
Yeah, let me bring in Matt Torbett on that, former Labour advisor. Matthew, that idea that there is a tipping point in terms of the palate of the public that Mally said that is really interesting one, isn't it? Because Trump isn't doing well in the polls here at the moment, and it is because people are saying we don't like his approach to immigration. Now, he must sit there with his head in his hands going, I've literally done what you asked me to do. You can't keep anyone happy when it comes to immigration. What's our tipping point in the UK, Matt?
Oh, it's a good question. I think I wouldn't say we're there now, and so I don't want to disappoint you. I don't think Trump has influenced us. I think Shabana Mahmood has been quite open. She's looked at the Danish way of doing things and the idea of breaking up potential ghettoisation in the UK. I think you have to react because it's top of the polls of people's interests. You know, people are bothered about immigration. If it's not the cost of living, it's immigration. And I've said for some time, there is a perception, whether people, whether it's true or not, that people are coming across the channel and skipping the queue ahead of people that are from this country.
Yeah. OK, Matt, we've got to take a quick break for the weather, but that's only 1 hour. It went quite quickly, didn't it? Stay with us. We will be back after a quick look at what's going on outside your window. See you in a minute.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Morning, welcome along to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. More wet weather for most places today. The main exception will be Western Scotland, where it'll be largely dry and bright, with a bit of shelter here from a pretty cold easterly wind, which really will bring a chill along the coast of northeast England and eastern Scotland. Pretty wet for Northern Ireland, spells of showery rain working north across England and Wales. It won't rain all day. There will be some drier slots, but of course any rain falling onto the saturated ground of southwest England and parts of Wales likely to cause some problems. We have a Met Office warning in place here too. That's where we'll see the top temperatures, 10, 11 degrees, but further north, 4 or 5 with that rain and that cold wind. It's going to feel a lot colder than that. As we go through the day, well, the showers may start to ease across parts of the south, may turn a bit drier for this evening's rush hour, but still a lot of spray and surface water on the roads. Yellow warning for much of southwest England, parts of central and eastern Wales also. The rain continuing to track northwards, soggy day for Northern Ireland and Scotland. Some snow over the hills this morning over eastern Scotland. That'll be confined really to the very tops of the hills by the end of the day as things slowly turn a bit milder, but as I said, it won't feel all that mild with the wind and the rain, which only continues to slowly edge north through the night. A drier slot for a time, but look at this, further bands of heavy showers coming into Wales and southwest England as we go through the early hours. Temperatures mostly holding up at 3 to 5 degrees Celsius. into the weekend, and so, well, it's looking showery. Perhaps not quite as wet as it has been through the week, but still there will be some showers around, and where we continue to see downpours over saturated ground. So for Wales, South West England and Northern Ireland, that continues to bring the risk of further flooding. Parts of eastern England may have a largely dry day on Saturday, and again with some shelter. Western Scotland's doing all right. May see some sunny spells here, but otherwise cloudy. Temperatures just ticking up a little bit this weekend. Goodbye.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dordme, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show live from Washington, D.C. This is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America tonight, including this.
Sorry for having believed Mandelson's lies and appointed him.
A Prime Minister on death row and a government on life support. Half of the UK wants Sir Keir Starmer to resign, and tonight a revelation from Washington about Lord Mandelson's appointment that may just finish off the PM.
I have a feeling it's going to work out very well. They're talking about a very long-term, powerful lease, a very strong lease, and I think we'll be inclined to go along with your country.
Chagos saga continues. Today, it seemed as though President Trump was ready to back the Prime Minister's Chagos deal, calling it the best he could make. But we've heard from Niall Gardner in the studio just an hour ago to say that he is getting mixed messages from the White House that all is not lost for the UK. Also tonight.
It's just bullshit, right? And that's what you got going on in California.
To GBNews exclusive, Ben Leo sat down with a Brit and former advisor to David Cameron, who is in the running to be the next governor of California. Would you believe? Also tonight, this.
This is not easy, and it is not a comfortable decision, and it's one that I wrestle with.
This is breaking news tonight. Legal action has been launched against the government over that very controversial NHS puberty blockers trial for children. This may just force this government into another U-turn.
Our mom is a kind, faithful, loyal, fiercely loving woman.
This is that extraordinary story. It's shaking America. We brought it to you on Monday. This is NBC News anchor Savannah Guthrie, who has today issued an emotional plea for the return of her 84-year-old abducted mother. I'm Bev Turner. This is The Late Show Live. No breaks this hour. Thank you for joining me, and thank you to my panel who are still here. Of course, Mally Smith, Democrat strategist, and Stephen Kent, Republican commentator. Is that fair to call you a Republican commentator?
Sure is.
Is it? Okay. I know you're a political commentator. Sometimes you're a little bit left, a bit middle, aren't you? A bit centrist, which is quite rare in this country. Sure. You're either one thing or the other.
I have a complicated relationship with the Republican Party. Sometimes they really let me down, and I'm like, I don't want to play with you anymore. But yeah, that's pretty much what's happening.
And actually, Matthew Torbett, I imagine you can hard relate because you have a complicated relationship with the Labour Party as well from time to time, don't you?
You could say that, yes.
Right, moving on to this main news story this evening. Sir Keir Starmer is fighting for his premiership tonight over this decision to appoint Peter Mandelson as Britain's ambassador to the US. The level of anger now amongst MPs is becoming palpable. Today he delivered an apology for that decision.
Prime Minister, why was it that a man who had already twice resigned from government and, crucially, had a publicly known ongoing friendship with a convicted paedophile was appointed by you as ambassador to Washington?
It has been known publicly for some time that they knew each other. That is precisely why those questions were asked. The answers given to those questions were intentionally intended to create the impression that Mandelson barely knew him. Sorry for having believed Mandelson's lies and appointed him.
But we're hearing revelations from the White House that US Secretary of State Marco Rubio issued a warning to Labour and Downing Street when they suggested that Peter Mandelson was going to be given that top job. Apparently, they said, "What are you doing?" Well, Mally Smith and Stephen Kent and Matt Torbett, let's get stuck into this. Matt, it's not easy for Labour to get rid of a leader. It's not like the Conservatives, is it? Like, you have very small window in which you can do it and rather strict criteria. Just give us a sense of what the next steps might possibly be if Labour do want to defenestrate Starmer.
So you need 80 MPs, but it's not as simple as 80 MPs saying they have no confidence, much like the Conservative rules. You've got to have 80 MPs that say we back one single candidate just to be able to get the ball rolling. That then triggers a sort of competition as such. There's a short window to get nominations if you wish to be the leader, and the leader is automatically on the ballot if they wish to do so. So, for instance, Wes Streeton could get 200 MPs, Angela Rayner could get 100, and then you'll have Keir Starmer as well if he wished to do so. We don't tend to do it. It's not something we normally do. The other issue, and I'm going to have to find out if this is still the case, we looked at trying to get rid of Keir Starmer if we were going to lose Batley and Spen, the famous by-election with George Galloway in it. If George Galloway had won, some of us had a plan to go the next day to move a vote of no confidence. We later found out it was going to be trickier because the form that you had to get MPs to sign could only be gotten from the whip's office. So therefore, as soon as you go asking for that form, the chief whip's going to get straight on the phone to number 10 and say, we've got a bit of a rabble-rouser here, we're going to have to do something about them. So you can't just give a sheet of paper. It's got to be an official form. So the only way is to get a whip on side, which I believe one of the candidates has, and he could sneak you the form and not say anything.
That is extraordinary, and I imagine the slightly medieval nature of that might fascinate our American guests here, Mally. Mally, when you hear that, it is so old-fashioned, but I think that's part of the charm of our political system. And actually, should the party be able to get rid of their leader easily, or should it be quite a difficult thing to do?
Yeah, well, I think it just goes to a collective action problem that, you know, despite whatever your institution might be and the exact rules of getting rid of a leader or not, it's always going to be difficult. I'm thinking back to when President Biden had his terrible debate with Trump. There was a host of Democratic congressional members who were saying, look, we need to move in correct course because he is not going to win. But the problem is you don't want to be the first person to come out. You want to be the person to come out who takes it across the finish line, and then we get a new candidate. It comes with the, you know, the saying, if you come for the king, you best not miss. You don't want to do a failed coup because then you're in the worst of all worlds. So I think it's something that can translate across, you know, the ocean.
What do you think, Stephen? Should it be easy to get rid of your leader under a situation like this? I mean, every week that you're on, we seem to talk about the fact that the Prime Minister is on the ropes. Yeah. He's been on the ropes for a really long time now.
Yeah, you know, I won't speak out of school on the ins and outs of how things are going to work in the UK, but I'm always impressed by how quickly and easily y'all are able to move a person out who has lost the faith of the public and their colleagues and put somebody else in, like what Mally was saying about Congress. When we have an unpopular Senate or House leader, you cannot dislodge these people almost up until death if they happen to be a prolific fundraiser. American politics is very much driven by money and who is able to bring in the most for their party, and that person will remain in a leadership position until the end. And Chuck Schumer, as a Senate leader here, he's just a guy who seems to have lost most of the support by his colleagues in the Democratic Senate caucus, and still no movement there. So I do admire the way that things work in Britain here. I wonder if we should have a look at how the front pages are handling this story. I don't know whether we can bring up, say, let's have a quick look at the Times maybe, which is leading with PM labelled gullible and weak over Mandelson. I mean, that is so damning, Matt Torbett, to have a headline like that, gullible and weak. Clear and present danger, says the Mirror. Now, they're, of course, talking about his survival battle. Starmer fights for future over Mandelson scandal. Oh, you've got a different front page of the Times than we have. The Daily Telegraph is saying Rayner tilt at number 10. Hit by tax enquiry. Former Deputy Prime Minister could have to wait for HMRC investigation if Starmer quits. And the Mail, of course, talking about Angela Rayner as well. I'm ready to go. Can I ask my panel here, have you any idea who Angela Rayner is? Not I.
But she's ready to go.
I know who Margot Robbie is. She's on the front of all of your papers. Apparently, she's more important than Keir Starmer.
Well, you'd be surprised. We do like a bit of light and shade in the British press. And in the Independent, Keir Starmer saying, "I'm sorry for believing Mandelson's lies." Do you think he should apologise, Matt? Because I always think we beg for our politicians and our prime ministers to apologise, but when they do, I want to know exactly what they're apologising for, because you can't just say I'm sorry for believing him. It's like saying I'm just. It's basically a confession of being gullible, as he's called by the Times.
I'm not against politicians apologising. I think it can show humility. I think some wrongly believe it can show weakness. I think there's nothing wrong with going, I got this wrong. The problem, I think, specifically for Keir Starmer is he isn't a gifted orator. And even when he's trying to be genuine, he doesn't sound it, and I think he can annoy people. And as petty as it is, even the voice, you know, people go, God, this is just awful, I want to turn it off. So I think the problem lies in there. And actually, you know, as a broader point, I'm sure the boys in the studio will soon know who Angela Rayner is, and they'll know where Stockport is, so nothing could make me more proud, to be perfectly honest, to be.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, Matt, when we went to the ad break, Stephen did turn to me and go, Matt's accent is interesting. Where is that from? And I said, I thought you were a Yorkshireman.
I get that all the time, Bev. I sound more northern than I am. It's ridiculous. I'm like a walking parody, really. But no, Stockport born and bred and very proud of it. So Greater Manchester's finest.
Wonderful. I'm the worst person in the world on accents, and people ask me where the heck I'm from. I go, I'm from the American South, and they sound like, you're from North or South Dakota based on your accent. I'm like, I've never been to the Dakotas. I don't even know what that means.
Well, I tell you what, if you think Matt Torbett's got a funny accent, wait until you hear Angela Rayner. So is she from Stockport, Matt? Is Angela Rayner from Stockport?
Yeah, she's from Bridgehall Estate. She grew up on the estate next to mine. We grew up the other side of Adswood, so there's always been a little bit of local pride in the sense of... And actually, listen, a lot of talent in Stockport. We've got Phil Foden, Angela Rayner, David Dickinson will be known to the British viewers, Michelle Keegan. We've got all the beauty and the glamour and the football and everything. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, well, I'm from the north of Manchester, the other end of Manchester from Matt, because Stockport is sort of just about the south of it. While we're talking about this, let's have a listen to what... I think we're going to move on, actually. Let's move on to this interview that we've been trailing for you this evening. This is with Steve Hilton. Now, it might be a name that you are not familiar with, but trust me, if he gets elected to be the governor of California, which is looking like he might do, you are absolutely going to know who he is. He used to be David Cameron's top advisor. He's cemented himself in the race for California governor. He's a Republican, and he wants to replace the Democrat's Gavin Newsom. GB News' chief US correspondent Ben Leo went to LA to have a chat with him.
It's just bullshit, right? And that's what you got going on in California, just coming out of our ears.
Steve Hilton, thank you for welcoming us to your great
It's not bad, is it? Come on.
I know, what a scenery. You are an enigma because you were a Brit.
Yes.
I mean, do you still consider yourself a Brit?
Actually, literally, no. I've renounced my UK citizenship. You know, I've worked in the past in politics. I worked with David Cameron when he's in number 10. I've got a background in policy. Always been interested in it. Most of my career has actually been in business. I started companies back in the UK, including restaurants, a whole range of different businesses. I did a tech startup here in California. So the reason I mention all that is that most of my career has actually been in doing things. It's amazing, actually, when you look at California, it's now 16 years of one-party rule. 16 years where the Democrats have run everything. All the government, basically, is in the hands of Democrats, and the results are totally catastrophically bad. It's easy to forget when you're in such a beautiful place, and people may come here on holiday and think California's great. You look at the homelessness, you can see the crime, those things are visible. But underlying that, what you don't see is the economic disaster. Like right now, California, out of all 50 states in America, we have the highest unemployment rate, the highest poverty rate, the highest cost of living, everything that in a household budget, more expensive here than anywhere else. Gas prices, electric, rent, groceries, everything.
Chad Bianco, who is your only Republican rival, he was listening from the debate last night.
Yeah.
You say he's got more baggage than LAX. You call him BLM
Bianco, yes.
What was the other one? Oh, the shifty sheriff.
The shifty sheriff,
because he's the sheriff of Riverside.
He's the sheriff of Riverside County. I appreciate his service. Law enforcement, of course, is what we all depend on to keep us safe. But he did something that a lot of Republicans just can't accept, which is in 2020, during the Black Lives Matter riots in Riverside, as sheriff, the BLM, as they refer to it here, the BLM activists, they were running around everywhere doing this, take a knee, take a knee. I remember the mayor of LA at the time, Eric Garcetti, they did it to him. I remember, I'd never heard of Chad Bianco at the time. I wasn't aware of what he did. I remember seeing the mayor of LA with the BLM mob outside his house saying, take a knee, and he did it there in the street. I remember thinking, that is one of the most pathetic things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
To bend the knee to the mob.
Well, Keir Starmer did it as well. There's no clips of you taking the knee back in 2020, 2021.
If you find them, then please let me know. I'm very confident you won't.
Are you not worried, though? You talk about the last election where Trump made inroads here. Are you not worried about maybe some of the controversy, warranted or not, around, say, ICE, for example, and the administration? Because one of your rivals, I've forgotten their names, one of the Democrats, was saying that one of their policies would be taxing businesses.
I've never heard anything so insane.
Taxing businesses who help ICE, i.e., or even serve ICE officers, say, a coffee or something, or slap a tax on them.
Well, next they'll be taxing iced coffee, just to sort of, because they just want to tax everything. I mean, it's just
it is insane, though, isn't
it's
it?
insane. There's a whole aspect of that debate that is never really aired, certainly not in the mainstream media here, which is that. And I really relate to this as a legal immigrant. And I often say I'm the candidate of the legal immigrant community for the legal immigrant community. And I sit down with immigrants who've come here lawfully, doing it the right way, many of them years, even decades, to do it the right way. I was just in a Mexican coffee shop in East Los Angeles talking about all this, and we presented it very neutrally. Just asked them what they thought. There's a lot of controversy about ICE, deportations, immigration. What do you think? Honestly, they talk about it. It's all of Mexican heritage, as you might see from the most fervent kind of, Stephen Miller, who's driving the immigration policy in the Trump White House, and the kinds of things they say are. We're sick of it. We're sick of going to the grocery store and we can see illegal immigrants shouldn't even be here with free EBT cards. That's the cash card for welfare benefits, food stamps on a card, EBT cards, free cell phones. They get their rent paid. We never had this. It's just a very,
same as the UK, the hotels.
Question of fairness.
Yeah.
We did it the right way. We work incredibly hard, sometimes 2-3 jobs, pursuing our American dream, our California dream. And these people just walk in and get all these benefits. No.
Let me just ask you, please, about comparisons between California and the UK. Do you see any?
Very much.
In the way of managed decline?
Totally. This stagnation and sclerosis is just, it seems to be exactly the same. Over the years, the bureaucracy and process and bloat in government and in the regulatory state had just got so much that it's just almost impossible to get anything done, to build housing, to build infrastructure, to increase energy capacity. Energy, of course, is such a driver of costs in the economy and growth. So it's just this bloated, nanny state bureaucracy.
With the UK, you've got a bit of a revolution going on there as well. Lots of energy with your campaign here, breaking the mould of the Democrat stronghold. In the UK as well, you've got not just Reform and Nigel Farage, you've got even the Greens, Zach Balansky's on the scenes. What do you make of that?
Well,
what do you see in the next 3 years in the UK?
This is the inevitable response to the scale of government failure. You hear about the cost of living crisis and all this. Of course you're going to get a response that says, we're sick of this and we want change. And they elected a Labour government that seems to be an utter disaster on every front. Keir Starmer, totally useless.
Did you ever think about your accent and how people perceive you as a former Brit?
The last Republican governor had an accent much stronger than mine.
Yeah, well, of course. Someone mentioned that to me today.
I think it's going to be okay.
They were, of course, talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger there. Does it matter that he's a Brit, Mally?
I don't think it matters that it's a Brit. I think it matters that he's a Republican in a very democratic state. So I pulled up the election results from 2024, and in a year that Kamala obviously lost, she won California by 20 points. And I think he's running an interesting campaign. He's raising money, but I don't think he's going to be the next governor. There was Arnold Schwarzenegger, but that was, God, at this point, over 20 years ago. And I think we were just in a less polarized time where you could have a state that leaned one way, but potentially elect a governor who was of the different political party. I think we're just too divided now.
Yeah. What do you make of him, Steve Hilton? Is he impressive?
Well, he's obviously impressive, and the last two people that have stepped up to be the Republican candidates in California have been TV or radio presenters. The last major candidate was Larry Elder, who was running as the Republican in the the recall ballot race against Gavin Newsom, and that was when Gavin Newsom was facing some serious popularity issues based on scandals related to his conduct during COVID. And that was still not enough to push Larry Elder anywhere near the margin of victory. I wish Steve Hilton the best. He's a great guy to carry the Republican banner in California, but consider my hopes low.
Matt, love, what do you, were you familiar with Steve Hilton? Was it a name that you know? Have your paths ever crossed in politics?
Path has never crossed, but I was aware of Steve because he was always quite unorthodox and a little bit eccentric for someone that was in 10 Downing Street under David Cameron. I think there's something quite impressive about being English and being sort of second or third in the polls as it currently stands and only being 1% behind, and people sort of taking to that. I'm a little bit sceptical that he could end up the governor, purely because I don't think it's a state that's ready to trend that way. If you look at Gavin Newsom, who, you know, is obviously a little bit like Marmite, but I think is impressive in other ways. He's got a +8 approval rating, and especially with under 40s, he's got like a 21-point approval rating. That tells me that that state isn't really ready to go that way yet.
OK, let's have a look at another story now. Have we got time for the story? We're going to take a quick break. This is what's coming up on the Late Show Live.
Our mom is a kind, faithful, loyal, fiercely loving woman.
This is the most extraordinary story. It is shaking America. NBC News anchor, she's the host of the mid-morning show, Savannah Guthrie, is pleading for the return of her kidnapped mother. We're going to bring you the very latest on that. First, though, legal action has been launched against the government in a bid to stop a trial into puberty blockers for children. Well, that was King Charles being asked about the Jeffrey Epstein investigation there. This is not going to go away, is it, for lots of people implicated in this? Let me know your thoughts this evening. I'm going to discuss that in just a moment. First, though, breaking news tonight. Legal action has been launched against the government in a bid to stop this very controversial NHS trial into puberty blockers for children. Campaigners had previously sent a letter in December to the regulatory bodies, the government and the trial researchers, calling for it to be halted. But they have now launched formal action. Among those opposing the trial is J.K. Rowling. She's hit out at it as an unethical experiment on children who cannot meaningfully give consent. Let me talk to, I think we have a guest on this. Matthew Hulbert, former Liberal Democrat councillor Matthew Hulbert is there. Matthew, good evening. So nice to see you again. Sorry about that little delay there. We have a couple of Matthews. Right, this trial, it should be stopped, shouldn't it?
Hi, Bev. Great to be with you again. I've stayed up late just for you, Bev. So my view on this is that, look, you know, the Cass review allows for this. And, you know, I have my problems with the Cass review, but I'm constantly told, no, Matthew, we must abide by the Cass review. Well, the Cass review allows for these trials. And indeed, Dr. Cass herself has said that she's really pleased that the trials are going ahead. So that's point one. Point two is that, look, you know, the way I'll put it to you, Bev, is this. So I first knew that I was gay, right, when I was about 12 years old. I wouldn't have known what to have called it then, but I knew who I liked, I knew who I fancied, if I can put it that way, and I knew who I didn't. Are we really saying that children of the same age can't also know, in their minds and in their hearts, that they've been born into the wrong body, that they're the body tells them they're the gender other than
we definitely can say that, Matthew Hulbert. We definitely can. We definitely can say that, because there'll be so many perhaps confused kids who might think I might be gay, and they would have just grown up to be gay, and that's okay. And actually, unfortunately, the idea that we tell them now you're born in the wrong body means that that's what they think. They think, well, I'm not good enough to just be you know, Matthew Hulbert, 12 years old, being attracted to boys. Once you give children who are very suggestive the idea that perhaps there's something wrong with them, and that's what we're actually saying is being gay, you can't just be gay, there's something wrong with you, you're not in the right body. That child cannot consent to that. It's just nonsense.
But Bev, let's just turn that around for just a second. What you're also saying, therefore, given your point of view, is that you're saying to a child who knows in their heart, just like I knew that I was gay at that age, who knows that they've been born into the body that their mind tells them that they're not, you're saying to them that they can't possibly ever be that. Is that not what you're saying?
Yes. I am absolutely saying that, because it's too much of a risk to sterilise a child, to put them on these puberty blockers, which will change the potential, not only their sexual pleasure for the rest of their life potentially, but also their fertility. They can't decide that at that age, Matthew. There has to be a pause and therapy, frankly, because children who believe that they're not good enough at being a boy largely will perhaps have other learning needs. We know that the autism spectrum is often children on the autism spectrum are overrepresented in these figures, and we know that it is unfortunately, rather than accepting a child that may have homosexual inclinations, we're telling them you're in the wrong body, and to encourage that is so dangerous. The cost is too high.
I always enjoy our debates, Bev, but we just fundamentally disagree on we just fundamentally disagree on this. I think you know, it has to be age appropriate. It has to be and parents' consent has to be given, I believe, to be part of this trial. And indeed, you know, the people opposed to it tried to take it to court and didn't win. They lost that case. So, I mean, I think they should just accept defeat and accept that these trials are happening.
So just out of interest then with you, if at that age when you decided that you preferred boys to girls, if somebody had said to you, or you just read it on a TikTok, or your algorithm fed it to you over and over on your social media that you've been born in the wrong body, you might very well have signed up to one of these trials, Matthew. If your parents had said, yep, you know who you are, we believe you, you might have found yourself in that situation. Why would you not then? Help me understand.
Just two separate things. I knew I was gay, but I also knew I was a boy. You know, I was born in a boy's body, and my mind told me I was a boy. But that's the difference for these young people. They're born into one body, but their mind tells them that they're another. And the fact is, Bev, you know, with the greatest of respect, trans people exist, trans women exist, trans men exist, right? These people exist, and they deserve dignity and equality.
I agree with you, and I think as an adult I very much subscribe to trans people should be afforded dignity. I just wish them nothing but happiness and love in their life, to be content. I do. But the trouble is, children today aren't just getting those messages from their friends or in their own mind. They're getting it from this. The phones are so powerful that this is such a powerful influence on children today that you're going to get many more children who've heard the phrase, you are born in the wrong body. You're going to get many more children for whom it has been normalised to go under a process of castration, chemical interference in the most important functions of their human body. And it is experimental. Like, there is money to be made from the drug companies in this, Matthew. Does that not worry you?
That does worry me, of course, and whenever there's a profit motive, sometimes you have to question that. I think on that point, me and you would agree, Bev. But all I can tell you is that I knew I was gay at an early age. Many of these young people know that they've not been born in the right body. Trans people exist, and they all deserve dignity and proper, timely health care.
But is it, with this concept, you're born in the wrong body, it's sort of nonsense, isn't it? Because doesn't being trans come from a place of psychological dysfunction? It isn't a It comes from a place, well, there are all sorts of different theories as to different types of trans people, actually, and different types of trans people and when they decide to transition. And that's a very different kind of thing. But I just think as adults, go for your life, but we should not be mutilating children and pumping them full of hormones. Matthew, always a pleasure. Thank you so much, my love. We've run out of time. Matthew Hulbert there, former Liberal Democrat councillor there. Let me just ask my panel here. Can you be... Oh, apparently we're moving on. Can we be born in the wrong body?
No, that's a Gnostic religion, and it is untrue and disgusting.
Okay, there we go. Right, moving on. Should we have a look at some of the other main news here in America? US and Iranian officials have agreed to hold talks on nuclear weapons in Oman. The talks are expected to begin at 6 a.m. UK time, following the increase of American forces in the region and threatened military action. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt made this statement earlier.
The president, diplomacy is always his first option when it comes to dealing with countries all around the world, whether it's our allies or our adversaries. And so Special Envoy Witkoff and Jared Kushner will be traveling to Oman for those talks tomorrow, and we will see what comes of those. The president is standing by for an update from them.
Vice President J.D. Vance has claimed that European allies of the US have made more concessions to America over Greenland than they publicly admit, accusing them of being duplicitous on the world stage. What a surprise. And Canadian pop star Tate McRae is facing backlash because she appeared in a promotional video for Team USA ahead of the Milano Cortina Winter Olympics, which start next week, boys, this weekend.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Fellow Canadians slammed the video on social media, some of them calling it treason. Oops.
Trying to get to Milan for an amazing opening ceremony and meet Team USA. Then it's the weekend with America's best skating for gold and Lindsey Vonn's epic comeback. Then back to the States for the big game, Super Bowl 60.
Still to come this evening on The Late Show Live.
The Epstein investigation. Thank you so much.
As the King is heckled about Jeffrey Epstein whilst greeting well-wishers, do the royals have an obligation to explain what they know about that island? We're going to be discussing that shortly. First, though,
Armand is a kind, faithful, loyal, fiercely loving woman.
it's a story that is shaking America. NBC News anchor Savannah Guthrie has issued an emotional plea today for the return of her abducted mother. We'll bring you the very latest on that. Don't go anywhere. Quick look now at your weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Morning, welcome along to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. More wet weather for most places today. The main exception will be Western Scotland, where it'll be largely dry and bright with a bit of shelter here from a pretty cold easterly wind, which really will bring a chill along the coast of northeast England and eastern Scotland. Pretty wet for Northern Ireland, spells of showery rain working north across England and Wales. It won't rain all day. There will be some drier slots, but of course any rain falling onto the saturated ground of southwest England and parts of Wales likely to cause some problems. We have a Met Office warning in place here too. That's where we'll see the top temperatures, 10, 11 degrees, but further north 4 or 5 with that rain and that cold wind. It's going to feel a lot colder than that. As we go through the day, well, the showers may start to ease across parts of the south, may turn a bit drier for this evening's rush hour, but still a lot of spray and surface water on the roads. Yellow warning for much of southwest England, parts of central and eastern Wales also. The rain continuing to track northwards, soggy day for Northern Ireland and Scotland. Some snow over the hills this morning over eastern Scotland. That'll be confined really to the very tops of the hills by the end of the day as things slowly turn a bit milder, but as I said, it won't feel all that mild with the wind and the rain, which only continues to slowly edge north through the night. A drier slot for a time, but look at this, further bands of heavy showers coming into Wales and southwest England as we go through the early hours. Temperatures mostly holding up at 3 to 5 degrees Celsius. into the weekend. And so, well, it's looking showery, perhaps not quite as wet as it has been through the week, but still there will be some showers around, and where we continue to see downpours over saturated ground. So for Wales, southwest England and Northern Ireland, that continues to bring the risk of further flooding. Parts of eastern England may have a largely dry day on Saturday, and again with some shelter. Western Scotland's doing all right, may see some sunny spells here, but otherwise cloudy. Temperatures just ticking up a little bit this weekend. Goodbye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Madam Vice President, what's going on with Kamala HQ?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. I have good news.
Well, honestly, if you're listening on the radio, that was Kamala Harris with her good news. She's relaunching part of her social media presence. She could be. Seriously, don't go to bed. You've got to stick around to watch this. It really is quite something. I'm going to show you that in just a minute. First, though, investigators in Arizona are saying they have not yet identified a person of interest in the bizarre and suspected abduction of the NBC News anchor Savannah Guthrie's mother. This is 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie. She disappeared in the middle of the night on Saturday from her home. Authorities say they are investigating an alleged ransom note and blood that was found on the porch, and believe that she was taken against her will. President Trump offered his support on Truth Social today, saying, "I spoke with Savannah Guthrie and I let her know that I am directing all federal law enforcement to be at the family's and local law enforcement's complete disposal immediately." Let me bring in my guests here, Stephen Kent, Mally Smith, Matt Torbett, down the line. Just explain to us, Stephen, who this woman is and why this story is so significant.
Well, Guthrie is one of the largest news personalities in America, and as far as right and left and kind of partisan presenters go in the world, Guthrie has one of the most intact, centrist, just straight journalist reputations imaginable. She is largely loved and respected in the world of journalism and by audiences. The taking of her mother, this is very random, obviously targeted, and very scary. I mean, the latest information that we have is that a person was detected by the home security camera at 2 a.m., and then the cameras were taken out, and blood on the porch. And so we're still trying to figure out the authenticity of this issue with the ransom notes, but what a nightmare.
What a nightmare. Olivia Guthrie made this plea on social media. Have a look.
We are ready to talk. However, we live in a world where voices and images are easily manipulated. We need to know, without a doubt, that she is alive and that you have her. We want to hear from you, and we are ready to listen. Please reach out to us.
So that's Savannah Guthrie there, the news anchor, and that's her sister Olivia with her, and her brother, I believe. I mean, this is such a big story here. It actually delayed the press briefing in the White House today. Caroline Levitt said this today.
I apologize for the delay. The president and I were watching the press conference about the search for Savannah Guthrie's mother, which is just a heartbreaking situation. The president, as you all know, spoke directly with Savannah yesterday and told her that the federal government is here to help. Any requests that are made by state and local officials in the search of Miss Guthrie will absolutely be accommodated. I spoke with the FBI directly about that today as well. And our hearts and our prayers are with Savannah and her entire family as they search for her dear mother.
And Mally, what makes it also more stressful for the family and anybody watching on is that her mother's not very well either, is she?
I mean, it's hard to think how sick and deranged you must be to kidnap an 84-year-old. I mean, kidnap anyone, but kidnap an elderly person to try to do, I mean, we're learning more about this case, but to do ransom or if you have some vendetta. But as Stephen said, she is a journalist who is someone that Americans love in a time where, as a country, we're incredibly polarized. She's one of the few people who, people don't go to their immediate corners when they think about her, and Americans just broadly love her and respect her as a journalist.
And this idea that it was a kidnapping as opposed to, an elderly woman who isn't very well. She has a pacemaker. I think she has a heart condition. She's on medication. She's in a lot of pain. You would think the assumption would be maybe she's gone out for a walk. She's got disorientated. It was like the authorities very quickly jumped to this conclusion that she'd been abducted without much evidence to back that up.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I think that they kept their cards close as soon as they reviewed the scene. They were in and out of the scene very quickly, almost within 24 hours, as opposed to multiple days at a time. And I think that is because it was actually a very clear-cut for them situation where they understood damaged, missing security camera, blood on the porch, signs of forced entry, what they were dealing with and what they were going to have to put together in terms of a ransom negotiation strategy. And so they kept their cards close. I initially, again, I thought this was maybe a disoriented senior, maybe took too much of their medication and wandered off into a strange direction. But, right now, TMZ and CNN are evaluating ransom letters that indicate that Nancy is okay but scared, but that the family is not going to have any way to contact the kidnappers, which I don't know how that works.
Well, and jumping off what Stephen's saying there, I think the authorities could potentially have narrowed it to a list of folks they think it is based on crazy people who live around them or existing threats to Savannah and her family. But given that they're dealing with a very unstable person, they're probably keeping that to themselves as they try to figure out what to do.
And Savannah said there, didn't she, in that statement today, we are ready to talk to you, but we need clear evidence that our mother is alive and well. I mean, that was very much the language of a hostage situation.
Yeah, and if I may, former Secret Service agent Jonathan Wackrow was just saying this evening that what is being engaged in here is a form of psychological attack on the family. Because right now, what is going on is one-way communication only. They have received no contact from these people, just mere suggestions of the state of being of Nancy. And so right now, the Guthries are in the worst possible box because they are not even able to negotiate or have a conversation about what it is these people want and how quickly.
Yeah, it's just desperately sad. It caught my imagination as soon as I saw this at the weekend, because actually to a British audience, I guess it has limited appeal if people don't know who this person is. If it was, a big news presenter in the UK, then, there would be all over the front pages. It isn't really breaking through to the British press, but I think it's utterly gripping, and I think it's devastating for the family, absolutely devastating. Because the other thing is that Savannah Guthrie has an incredibly close relationship to her mother and is very public about that, isn't she?
Well, and that's another thing that's terrifying about it, because who knows why this person took her mother, but given A, how crazy it would have to be to do that, and B, how they're acting, who knows if they want money or if they're just a crazy person with a vendetta against a famous person.
Yeah, a stalker type behavior, perhaps.
Yeah. I think it's safe. I think it's safe to assume it's about money. But we've heard talk so far of a ransom. I haven't seen a dollar figure. What it is. We don't know what's being asked.
Well, Savannah said today, we've seen the stories in the papers, she said. We've seen the stories in the media about a ransom demand or about, that may not have been the word that she used, but about this being an abduction. The language of it was very vague. She wasn't talking specifically to a potential kidnapper. She was talking of the story of this being a kidnap, which I thought was very strange. But anyway, we will, of course, on GB News, keep you up to date with that story when we hear anything about it, because it is really desperately sad. Right, still to come this evening on The Late Show Live, Kamala Harris. Remember her? She's making a return. I'll tell you what she's doing in just a minute. Plus, the Home Office has just had a major win. What is it? Find out in just a sec. Let's have a look at some more inside stories, though, with Mally and Stephen and Matthew Torbett. Now, 3 African countries are set to take back thousands of criminals and illegal migrants after the UK threatened them with Trump-style visa sanctions. The Democratic Republic of Congo, Namibia and Angola have agreed to the return of their citizens after backing down following threats from Savannah Mahmood, the Home Secretary, to ban visas from the country's ministers, diplomats and tourists. Matt Torbett, just before we had a conversation about whether the UK was being inspired by President Trump's behaviour. Exhibit A, my friend. This is exactly what we're doing. This would something that Savannah Mahmood would never have suggested unless Trump had made it acceptable, surely.
I think in this instance, there may well be some inspiration, clearly. It's clearly modelled on what President Trump has done. And I think ties in with, I spoke to a civil servant the other week who said that Savannah Mahmood has been very different compared to other Home Secretaries in the sense of she has a very maximalist approach. Whether you agree with it, whether you don't agree with it, whether it will work or not, the idea is she wants to go full force, throw her whole lot in and see what happens and get it done. It appears in this instance it's worked, so, full credit to her.
Yeah, absolutely. Credit where credit is due. Apparently this means that up to 4,000 convicted criminals, including murderers, rapists and illegal migrants from those 3 countries can now be deported back to those African states. Stephen, are you pleased to see that your president is inspiring our government to be a little more muscular?
He has encouraged many of the Western allies to actually stick up for themselves and their working class citizenry who never voted for mass migration to come to their countries. And just like you mentioned colonialism earlier, and I've been thinking a bit about this and sort of the legacy of the colonies since World War II, and mostly all of those were handed back. I mean, like Britain, France, Belgium, these are countries that have lost a huge amount of leverage over other parts of the world, of which they are now receiving a lot of migrants from those places. It just kind of goes to show you what happens when you don't actually have the kind of power and influence in the world that European powers used to have. Yeah. And we act surprised when these countries are sort of beset upon by people coming and they don't really have any sort of diplomatic or military leverage to do anything about it. The world has changed very fast and they are sticking up for their own borders now.
Yeah, Mali, we've talked about migration already tonight, so apologies if I don't come to you on this one, but we've got other stories I want to get through because the King has been confronted over his brother Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's ties to Jeffrey Epstein during a royal visit. Of course, Andrew denies any wrongdoing, but here's the moment that happened. So should the family be forced to speak out on this? Mali, royals, Epstein, it's all the elites doing what they want, isn't it?
I mean, I think every elite who has had significant ties to Epstein should be held accountable, and I think that includes royals in the UK. And I think we're seeing it in the United States with President Bill Clinton and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. They are now going to be testifying in a closed-door session. They want it to be a public hearing, which would be way more exciting. That we could do. We could do a great panel on that. But it's interesting to see, though, this accountability is not something that everyone is going to love. President Trump himself said he loved Bill Clinton, and he just didn't know why they were doing this to poor old Bill being brought into testimony after he was president. We should just let that guy live his life. Well, the reason President Trump wants Bill Clinton to live his life and not have to do this testimony is that Democrats have made it pretty clear that if we are subpoenaing Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton to do a closed-door hearing, we can do the same with Trump, and we can do the same with Prince Andrews. So my position is clear. Let's have all these people testify. It's insane to me that we have 0 arrests. No John has been arrested for the Epstein files. No John. We have so much evidence that illegal activities were taken. and happened on this island and across the country with Epstein. So yes, let's have them testify.
I just want to get this story in about Kamala Harris as well, guys, before we run out of time. She's relaunched her Kamala HQ account on social media. She's given it a radical rebranding. It's now called Headquarters. She calls it the new Gen Z-led progressive content hub. And if you thought that sentence was the stuff of nightmares, she then goes on to say that she intends to mobilize pro-justice, pro-fairness, pro-democracy young people against far-right extremism. Have a listen.
Madam Vice President, what's going on with Kamala HQ?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. I have good news. So Kamala HQ is turning into headquarters, and it's where you can go online to get basically the latest of what's going on, and also to meet and revisit with some of our great, courageous leaders, be they elected leaders, community leaders, civic leaders, faith leaders, young leaders. I'm really excited about it. So stay engaged, and I'll see you out there. Thank you.
Matthew Torbett, is that the kind of left-wing politician we need in the UK? Would that revive everybody's love of the Labour Party if only Kamala Harris was in charge?
Did we not learn from Brat Summer? You know, this doesn't need to happen. And if this is a pitch to sort of another presidential run, she'd have an half-decent chance. She's popular with Democrats. You will not get the nomination without support from black voters, which she's still popular with. She's still in most polls seen as the leader of the Democrats currently. But it ain't going to work, unfortunately. And I'm concerned about what is going to come out of this, really.
Mali.
I think everyone should take a step back. I don't think this means Kamala is running for president. She might, but the fact that they're using the Kamala Twitter and TikTok is simply because it has a ton of followers and they want to use it as a tool to organize for Democrats, and they don't want it to sit dormant and just not be doing anything. So look, she potentially...
Why not? Just let it sit dormant. Don't do that with it.
So you have these accounts that have millions and millions of followers. So the idea is let's put them to use. But I don't think it means she's running for president. She might. We'll have to see.
I just wanted to just remind us a little bit of maybe the things that she said. What, pro-democracy? What was on that list of wokeism?
Fairness, yeah. The young people love fairness.
Yes.
These are all good things, Bev.
Fairness polls very well.
Yeah, but also, what did she say about wanting to dissuade them from looking at the far right?
Can we
define your terms, Kamala Harris? You cannot talk about mobilising pro-democracy young people against far-right extremism without explaining what you mean by far-right extremism, can you, Matt?
I just want to point out, like, the horrible delivery on this whole video. I mean, this is like when Melania was asked about her documentary and she said it was about perspectives, insights, and moments. I mean, how much preparation went into the launch of this Headquarters 6-7 thing, and she still could barely pitch the thing. This woman could not sell pizza. And people love pizza. Like, this is why she lost the election in such dramatic scale. It's not going to happen for her. This just gets worse and worse.
Well, she didn't lose the election in dramatic scale. It was the closest election since 2000. Trump didn't even win a majority of the vote.
We have
plurality.
tight elections in this country, but that was about as bad as it's gotten.
Well, it's
in a long
the last
time.
25 years. It was the closest election we've had, and Trump didn't even win a majority of the vote.
She is only polling as a top Democratic candidate because it's not clear who the alternative is. As soon as we actually have declared Democratic candidates, that lady's gone.
Hey, listen, we may not be clear who our Prime Minister's going to be in 48 hours. You think you've got problems? It is one of the things I find fascinating about American politics is that once somebody is in government, the opposition sort of disappear, Matt. It's one of the things that we do really well in the UK, isn't it, to have a functioning, challenging opposition at all times.
I think it's definitely beneficial. I'm not sure whether the president, whoever it is, would want to face president questions once a week, though. I think that's something that all Americans wonder why on earth we put ourselves through it. The one thing I will say very quickly on Kamala Harris, I went to some of the rallies during the presidential election, and it was nice to be surrounded by people who had hope and joy, regardless of how misguided that may have been. And it's something I think we miss at the moment on the left in this country. We don't see where the hope and joy is.
Well, this is true. Do you still have hope and joy in your heart, Mally Smith?
I do. I was at those rallies. Had so much hope, so much joy, but we lost.
Well, I had a lot of hope and joy at the start of that show, and you did not let me down, gentlemen. Thank you so much, and thank you at home for joining me and for getting in touch. I'll go and read your messages now while I go to bed, and I will see you tomorrow night. Night-night.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Morning, welcome along to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. More wet weather for most places today. The main exception will be western Scotland, where it'll be largely dry and bright, with a bit of shelter here from a pretty cold easterly wind, which really will bring a chill along the coast of northeast England and eastern Scotland. Pretty wet for Northern Ireland, spells of showery rain working north across England and Wales. It won't rain all day. There will be some drier slots, but of course any rain falling onto the saturated ground of southwest England and parts of Wales likely to cause some problems. We have a Met Office warning in place here too. That's where we'll see the top temperatures, 10, 11 degrees, but further north 4 or 5 with that rain and that cold wind. It's going to feel a lot colder than that. As we go through the day, well, the showers may start to ease across parts of the south, may turn a bit drier for this evening's rush hour, but still a lot of spray and surface water on the roads. Yellow warning for much of southwest England, parts of central and eastern Wales also. The rain continuing to track northwards, soggy day for Northern Ireland and Scotland. Some snow over the hills this morning over eastern Scotland. That'll be confined really to the very tops of the hills by the end of the day as things slowly turn a bit milder, but as I say, it won't feel all that mild with the wind and the rain, which only continues to slowly edge north through the night. A drier slot for a time, but look at this, further bands of heavy showers coming into Wales and southwest England as we go through the early hours. Temperatures mostly holding up at 3 to 5 degrees Celsius. Into the weekend, and well, it's looking showery.